So what I'm doing is I'm following what Scott did, and where he added his personality to the book, like who Scott Snyder is in that book. That's why it's good, and so I'm going to try to do that as well. So I'm going to take.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is your host Wes, as always. Today I'm joined by Corban of Frank Caliendo's Comic Playground podcast, and we're going to take a look back at Tom King's Batman run. King's Batman will end up one of the most controversial in the 80-year history of the character. Tom King's Batman series has devolved into an endless cycle of bad writing tropes, terrible characterization, basically just all-around bad storytelling. But it wasn't always this way, or was it? When DC Rebirth was announced, Tom King, fresh off a stellar Vision run at Marvel, was tabbed as the new Batman writer. He was joined by one of the best artists in the entire industry, David Fitch. Corban, what were your thoughts when Tom King was brought on board as the new Batman writer back in 2016?
You know, I was extremely optimistic, Wes. I thought it was a fresh look. Obviously, following Scott Snyder's run was a very tough task for whoever inherited it. So that was something that was always in the back of my mind. Can it hold up to the storylines that we've followed for the last couple of years? Will there ever be a story that matches that great team of Snyder and Capullo that was so iconic? But King's run on the Vision really stuck with me. I really enjoyed that. I wasn't too familiar with King's work before that, although I ended up reading some Miracle Man a little bit after to kind of get myself further into his writing style and prose. But just the Vision was such an acclaimed story, and one that I really liked for just really making the image of that character for me, one that wasn't super well known, in my opinion, as far as understanding him, that I said, okay, this could be great if we get some sort of deep character study into Batman, exploring more of his motivations in a way that hasn't been done before, while giving us a steady storyline that, you know, has action, but is something that I want to pick up and read every couple of weeks. Then we have a win. So I wouldn't say cautiously optimistic, because I was a little more on board than that, but I had my questions, just not being familiar with King's work as a whole.
But you were on board nonetheless.
Yes, I was with it. Like, let's bring on some King.
All right, well, Tom King's initial run on Batman was hailed by many critics in the industry as a groundbreaking new look at the character. I think most Batman readers were very satisfied with the first three story arcs: I Am Gotham, I Am Suicide, and I Am Bane. You know, what did you think of his initial run with the character? What elements did you like and that he brought to the table, and what didn't you like?
I really enjoyed I Am Gotham. I mean, obviously it's the first story, but it was a fresh look in having, you know, Batman contend with superpowered individuals that are in his town, in his city, in Gotham, and how that works. I thought that Gotham Girl and Gotham were two interesting characters that were explored in a unique way, at least to start. And I think that element, along with understanding Batman's motivations of, okay, how is he going to get used to sharing his city with another a superhero team, and one that's more on par of a Superman level strength than just another vigilante like himself, in terms of just, you know, normal ability but great drive, you know, the same Batman tropes that we all have known and love. So that was interesting. I gave it this, like, for me it was the same thing that I enjoyed about it. I also knocked a little bit. I enjoyed him going outside the box, in my opinion, exploring something that hadn't been really kind of delved into, and making that the first storyline that you're going to run with. Okay, here's your character, boom, let's go. And I really enjoyed Gotham Girl and Gotham. I thought, though, as the storyline went a little bit further, that maybe making it so that, I mean, dispatching Gotham early was an interesting choice. I get it, but it still was a curious one for me. And then making Gotham Girl so that, hey, she has this great power, but, you know, the more she uses it, it's killing her. It's eating away at her, just like it did Gotham. And you have to manage that. King made it like it was such a big deal, where it seemed like it wasn't that like big a quality or defining. I'm not saying I've seen it before, but it's sort of like one of those, oh, if I use too much of my power, I will die. That trope's been used before. And I think King bought a little bit into his own hype there, where it was like such a big quality. And we spent a lot of time with Batman trying to save Gotham Girl's life, and we've seen where Gotham Girl has gone later in King's run, and how weird that's all become with her joining Bane and everything going in that line. So that would be a question for me. But I will say, as a first reader of his work, that I was stunned, but also pleasantly surprised by a bold, newer direction that he was going with that I thought was interesting.
You know what was interesting? In the fourth volume, which is the War of Jokes and Riddles, I thought that's the first time I really saw a chink in his armor. I was like, I don't think he can finish stories very well, because if you read that story, it's really interesting. And then the payoff is it's all a joke. Batman is played to look like an enormous fool. He joined up on Riddler's team, who was offing villains for him, and it was just so he could have fun with Joker and make Kite Man somebody important. I was like, that doesn't. He really made Batman look stupid here. Did you get the same feeling on that one?
I was gonna say you're right. I barely remember that storyline from I was reading it like a couple weeks ago, and I was thinking, wow, this was interesting, but only because I was reading some older Batman, trying to see where King went wrong. As we're reading, Batman 82 now, and like, oh my god. But anyways, to go back to what you're saying, yeah, it was. I think that's one of a prevailing thought of mine in King's Batman run, and I was referencing this a little earlier before we came on about Kevin Smith run on Batman, in the sense that when a writer puts too much of their own stamp on a character and takes it in a way that is not the character that we know, and not in a positive, fresh twist, let's explore a different element of his character. No, more like assigning traits and actions that this character would never do. What I subconsciously do is start assigning the role of the author or of the creative team to that character. So I mentioned Kevin Smith. There was a funny story in one of his works on Batman, where Batman was sharing with another hero or vigilante how one of his first missions he basically peed himself, and I'm sitting there going, that's not Batman at all. That's Kevin Smith thinking he's Batman. That's Kevin Smith writing as if he was Batman. And with Tom King, I see a lot of that, where it just makes Batman look foolish, look overly emotional. Like, so the same traits that have come to define Batman as just a tough will, the drive to end violence in Gotham, to avenge his parents' death, and being his strength is his mental toughness. To see him have all of these breakdowns and hallucinations and just things that Batman would never do. Yes, in my head, I've started to say, you know what, this isn't Batman. Like, that's maybe the way that I heal is I'm reading this, I'm going, this is Tom King writing as if he's Batman. Now, the damage is still done. It's still horrible, because you read this, you can't even look at it like, okay, what would Batman do? Who would King Batman or this hybrid do? And it does take you out of the story a little bit. And in several cases, I know you've said the same thing, Wes. You're like, what am I reading, and why am I reading this? And oh my god, this is Batman. Like, it's not like I can go to other titles. I mean, Detective, Batman Beyond. There's other titles, but this is the signature Batman run. And to go back to what you're saying, Wes, yeah, a lot of times in several different stories, not even just the war, jokes, and riddles, Batman is made to look a fool, a clown, overly emotional, just getting in his own way, a liar. I mean, stuff that Batman just isn't. There's a code there. And when you break that code, you go in a totally different direction, and King's went over that direction and danced in it.
Well, I think there are a lot of places where people started seeing King's Batman kind of go off the rails. For me personally, it was seeing Joker murder like a newlywed couple from in front of Batman. And then he held himself hostage, and then he like shot Batman in the face before Catwoman saved him. Like, I was floored by how inept and basically unheroic King portrayed Batman in issue, I believe it's 48. And I'm still shocked over it, if I'm being honest. Like, is there a specific moment for you where Tom King's Batman started to go south?
I mean, I read a while, and there was a lot of moments there. That was one that you just mentioned. That was like, ooh, and you get that face, like you smell something wrong. Like, I don't know if I like that. That was one. I think for me, the one point where I like left for like a week or so, and it was shocking for me, was Batman 71. When him and Catwoman had the off again, on again, and for some reason, that this next breakup, or this latest breakup, was a trigger for Batman to just spin off into basically an issue of delusion, hallucination. And I'm sitting there reading like, what in the world is this? I get that Catwoman is a strong character in King's run. Where do you know how this leading to the 12-issue maxi series and everything? And he established this relationship was going to be central to the Batman title pretty basically as soon as he got on. So that wasn't a surprise to me. I do think, though, the negative ramifications of every breakup, every fight they had, was overly on Batman in a way that was unlike him and really sold me south. The mission has always been central to Batman's mythos. That's kind of his MO. No matter what, he is focused and determined on achieving this single-minded mission. Very few things, the death of the parents being one, can dissuade him for more than a couple of minutes in a movie or a couple of issues in a series. And to have that, an off-again, on-again romance that has been just better described by other writers over Batman's 80-year history, be something that would take him that much out of the game, was a point where I said, oh, no, this isn't cool. You know, another one, and this is actually interesting because it just happened, but Batman 82, I was not a fan of, and I hope I'm not spoiling anything, just the Batman Catwoman Bane showdown. In fact, I'm not going to go any further into that, but there was one scene, in fact, let's say the first 3 pages, where they're getting ready to fight and they're doing what they need to do, and all of a sudden, let's just say Batman says one thing and then something else happens. And it's not only that he says one thing and does something else. We've seen, you know, Batman's like, oh yeah, and he'll achieve his word and have like an ace in the hole or something. No, he's straight up like we're playing for honor, for battle, and you're saying, okay, this is what we're gonna have, a one-on-one showdown. And then all of a sudden, by the way, boom. And that's all I can expose. But that to me was another one when I said, wow, like really, Tom King, this isn't Batman. This isn't the Batman I know, but more than that, he's not a heroic character. He's someone who constantly needs the support of not only secondary characters, but just one secondary character to do anything really for him. And I do think that is less of a partnership and more of a symbiotic relationship that deteriorates the quality of the writing, because it's not just a Batman book, it's a Batman Catwoman book, and they're intertwined. But I think that started with 71 because I'm a long-suffering Batman fan. I'm sure you are too, Wes, and I take a lot of bad writing before it really, really gets to me. And I think that was the first issue where I was like, okay, we got to take a break, Corban. This is a lot.
All right. So, you know, I really don't like Batman 48. Like I said, I was like, whoa, this doesn't Batman. Batman 50, The Wedding was, really pissed me off. For me, those aren't actually the low point in the series. Mine's similar to yours. It's during that Nightmare story arc, the same issue as 71. But for me, it's the pointless and self-indulgent stories in there. And it's Batman 68 with Lois and Selena at the Fortress of Solitude on their stag night, as Bruce and Clark are sitting at home looking like a couple of boring douchebags. I was like, this is the worst Batman comic I've ever read. And Batman 81 was close, but I actually it's 68. It's still the worst.
You know what's funny? That was pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, for me, it was weird. Again, a lot. There was one issue. I can't even remember the exact number, but Joker and Catwoman were both basically lying down, like bleeding from various injuries. We're living the good old days, and it felt so weird to me that they were doing this. And I was like, another chink, as you said, in the armor. That's like, no, this is not. What is this? Basically, like, I can't even say it's not what Catwoman and Joker do, but no, this is just weird. King's writing has gone to such. And he said this in one of his I guess interviews about how, hey, if we think about it, stories rarely go in a linear direction. Something about superheroes and comics, and this is all figments of our imagination anyway. It's all entertainment, and basically it doesn't have to be a linear line. There's not a clear progression. So he's basically giving himself permission to hop around in just these wild, wacky stories that make little sense on the underlining line of storytelling that you're trying to make, and that compromises the direction that you want the readers to follow you on when you keep putting out these crazy sidebar conversations or situations that make little sense to not only the characters themselves, but to the overlying story as it stands. So that's another one that was a big kind of no-no for me. I think one issue that I really had to hang up with for a while was the inclusion of Thomas Wayne in the run. And not for the better, in sort of a detrimental, hey, I'm your father and I need you to stop being Batman so much that I'm gonna compromise your city, everyone around it, and physical harm to you by teaming up with one of your baddies to show you that this is not the way that you should be. Like, what in the world is that whole thinking? And yes, I've tried to kind of boil it down to my reasoning of what it is. I'm sure King has a totally nuanced 12-issue miniseries to break that motivation down for you. But again, it's just confusing, and I'm not sure where we went wrong or where King went wrong. Let's say not we just read it. Where King went wrong with these stories, but it's just one train wreck after another. As we kind of wind down here,
you bring that up. His work isn't working as a serialized story anymore. No. In my opinion, King has developed a lot of bad writing habits during his Batman run. His writing is downright pretentious the majority of the time. I loathe his use of poetry, his disregard for DC continuity and character history, and he really does have a penchant for randomly jumping around with no rhyme or reason, within the story arcs. Like, how would you characterize King's writing as the series progressed?
I mean, I would say everything you said and add that, I think he's gotten a little bit too much of his own Kool-Aid in terms of how good of a writer he thinks he is. You already said the inclusion and overuse of Kite Man for nothing else than to make him look like, hey, look at me develop this character that nobody really knew from the 60s and make him into an important part of my storyline in the destruction of Batman. Like, it made zero sense, and I think it was nothing other than to boost his own ego of how good of a writer he is. I think sometimes when you're reading his issues, and you said lack of direction, lack of order, I'm just jumping around, that he fully believes that this is a storytelling, I guess, gift of being able to jump around, and he overuses it to the point that I think he really thinks that this is a new element in the medium. And it's not just, oh, this is how I write and I'm making excuses for it. No, this is how I write and it's good writing. So I'm going to continue going to it no matter what the readers say, because this is Tom King and look what I've done for Batman so far. And I think that that is just as detrimental to everything else you mentioned about being pretentious, the poetry overuse in his stories, romanticizing it to the point of pounding the utter mess out of the story. All of these are negative aspects that over time, rather than acquiesce and open up and maybe say, okay, maybe I can switch it up, he is doubling down on his approach and doubling down on his personal philosophy on this, to the detriment of any and all concerned. And to me, this is only a microcosm of other issues going on at DC that they're able to encourage and let this quote unquote work flourish. But in that same vein, it's also showing a writer with his inability to kind of not only listen to readers, because I think there's a certain element of that you have to do and can't do to stay focused on your own creative vision and focus, but to double down on, oh, this is not only detrimental from a lot of people, critics, everyone, that this is not very good writing, but I think it's good writing. I've done this for a while. I'm going to continue doing this because, gosh darn it, I'm Tom King. I don't know what his reason is, but as we can see in these 82 issues so far, I would say, I mean, I was okay, no real issues for maybe the first 20-ish. I'm going to say I couldn't really think of any glaring, oh, this is bad. But after that, it's kind of gone down, and rather than say, okay, listen, this is where I want to go with this, it just continues to go on that downward path. And so for me, I think that's where you say the detriment is just the deterioration of writing, but also the overinflation of ego in terms of how it relates to the writing.
Yeah, it was really weird. When the non-wedding happened, everyone was pissed off, and like you said, he doubled down. He went on social media. He reassured everyone that he had this really big 100 issue story in mind that was going to conclude with his planned City of Bane arc. There are only 3 issues left in that run now. I personally think, Batman is beyond saving. Do you think he can even save the City of Bane story arc at this point?
If you would ask me this last week, I would have disagreed with us. I would have said, okay, listen, there may still be a chance that King can wrap this up. I think you give him less time to work, as far as less issues to work with. Maybe he'll actually do more of progressing the actual storyline, and we can get to an end game. I was really high on that. Then last week's issue came out, and right now I'm in the same boat as you are. There is no way that Batman saves. There's no way that King can save this ship. The ship is gone. Whether we're going to be on for the ride is up to each reader's kind of personal interpretation there. But no. And again, I think it's maybe too early to kind of spoil what the reading is. Actually, no, it's not. There's so many issues on that last book, in my opinion, in just one issue, especially a big one, like you said, with 3 issues being left in this run, that we're left with yet another weird cliffhanger where the main antagonist of Batman's run may or may not be dead. We don't know what the issue is now with Batman, tying a storyline with Catwoman, tying a storyline with Thomas Wayne, and the city is still in flux. No, again, this was just another example of an issue with King's writing, and an issue that I'm not going to lie, I thought was actually one of the more straightforward ones that we've had from him in a couple of weeks now, where, okay, you open the book and boom, here's where we were left off with, and we're actually going to continue with where we were left off and not take a side quest or anything. But even then, you had issues with Batman's character that come into question. You had issues with the proposed confrontation in question that come into question. You have issues with the end of the story leading into the next one, where you now have, like you said, a couple issues left here, and we're still no better for it than we were before. You had, in essence, an issue that not only brought up more problems of King's writing that you could be more critical of, but didn't progress the storyline any more than incrementally, because you still have a lot of loose ends to tie up. And in a way that I'm more and more convinced is going to leave me with a disappointing finish. Like the prism to kind of save this is closing, by the issue. And at this point, I'm right there with you, Wes. I really don't think that there is a way they can salvage this in a way that we go, hey, you know what, King? It's been a complicated run. You've had a lot kind of go up and down here. We still have to get through your series here, but you know what? You kind of saved at the end. It wasn't the worst run I've ever read as a Batman writer. It's not going to go up with the Chuck Austins of the X-Men or something else of like this was unmitigated, like just one of the worst I've ever seen. But now, I mean, who knows, Wes? But I'm definitely a lot more critical about it than I was before.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining me today. I think you're going to be making your Comics Aficionados debut on Saturday. Is that correct?
That is the plan. Yes, sir. I'm very excited for it.
All right, well, we'll be debating who is the worst writer right now at DC, Tom King or Brian Michael Bendis. And I think you're gonna enjoy it and bring a lot to the table.
Yes, sir. Can't wait, man. Thank you again.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
Thanks a lot, Wes.
Later. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.